Long-term viability of Xbox Game Pass is now coming into question as we get more and more answers as to exactly how good or bad the service actually does, and why it looks like Sony will probably never follow suit. And that's a good thing, not only for Sony and PlayStation gamers, but for the gaming industry and console industry in general as well. I'm going to get into it because we have some fascinating news to cover, and I'm sure that everybody's going to want to hear this, and I'm sure that this is a topic that you don't want to miss. Hey there everyone, I'm the Crapgamer, and this of course is Crapgamer Reviews, your home for gaming news, opinion, reviews, and much more. You'll probably notice a few cool changes around here, but that shouldn't stop you from giving us a like and possibly even consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some of your free time with me and my silly YouTube channel as always. So we have an idea that Microsoft decided to pack it in and totally go for the service model with Xbox Game Pass. Now, we don't know how close Xbox was to shutting their doors back in the day, but it's a pretty good indication that probably back in 2015 or so, they really heavily suggested closing up shop. You don't need to look any further than the evidence that in 2015 specifically, multiple games were canceled, including Scalebound, including Fable Legends, including a dwarf game by a studio that they ended up closing up shop. That was the studio that actually did Max the Curse of Brotherhood. They also let go of Twisted Pixel, the studio. They also gave up different IPs, and they closed, the Phantom Dust got closed down. They decided not to remake that. So basically, around 2015, 2016, they kind of stopped making games. I think they had a few that were already in development, and the rest were really kind of bare bones. If you look at the product that we were getting in 2017, because that's when we would have started to see some of the dividends, the payoffs from games that were started creation in 2015. And so even something like Sea of Thieves, which I really liked, that game was so bare bones and so cheaply done at launch that it was unbelievable. And it wasn't until later that it actually got the content. State of Decay 2 looked like it was on a budget of a shoestring, right? Like it didn't look good. And so if you look at it also, at what point did Halo Infinite actually start development? Has it really been in development for 6+ years? If so, that's terrible. And that's a terrible look for that studio, because it does not look like a game that's been in development for 6+ years. It just doesn't. Something tells me that game started development around 2018 or so. Right? They probably weren't doing anything much at all at that studio. And then you look at the games like, where's the next Forza Motorsport? That game hasn't been seen in 5 years. Did that company just stop making games all of a sudden? Like, these are things that I question when I look at things, okay? So Game Pass subscriber numbers report obviously raises questions about services' long-term viability. Microsoft's strategy in the video game market has started to come together and gain form over the last few years. Where it once was unclear what their place was in the video game world, now, obviously they were playing second fiddle to PlayStation, or do they have an actual vision for the industry? Now, the funny part about this entire situation is the Xbox 360 showed the blueprint on how to beat PlayStation. They came out first, they came out cheaper, and they came out with great exclusive games. Now, for whatever reason, they got away from that. They went after gimmicks, they went after casual gamers, and that was all at the cost of the hardcore gamer and the console itself. Under Phil Spencer's leadership, the brand supposedly has been revitalized, but they're not actually doing any better than they were previously. Xbox doubling down on the strengths that made the brand popular in the first place haven't really seemed to come to fruition here. The interesting part for me is Sony basically chased them out of the console market, the traditional console market. Obviously, because for Xbox, we've discussed this, success isn't counted like Nintendo and PlayStation. They're not trying to sell the most consoles or copies of games. I mean, of course, if they do that, that'd be great. They wouldn't mind it, but they rather want to create a sustainable ecosystem of engaged users, bringing in recurring revenue on an ongoing basis for years to come. For Microsoft, it's all about that, and the centerpiece of the strategy has been Game Pass, which they've been pushing to an extraordinary degree over the past few years. From bundling it in with new console purchases, frequent $1 promotions, subscriptions, payment plans for the console that include Game Pass commitments, extremely high profile marketing and branding. They really pushed it, obviously a lot, especially with the third-party AAA releases, and of course, you know, they bought a bunch of studios to try to fund first-party releases. That's something that they're going to continue to do in the future. But here's the thing with having the subscription service like this one. It's really expensive to operate and maintain. It took Netflix and Spotify years until they started breaking even, not even making a profit, just breaking even. And until they were operating under millions of dollars of losses, the reason is obviously really clear. If you think about it, you have to license and produce a staggering amount of content for your service, but you can't directly monetize any of it. The income you're getting is only fixed amount from your subscriber base, and especially in the early years, your subscribers are likely to all be highly engaged ones, meaning they're actually consuming more content than you are getting income from. So over time, this isn't as much of a problem. Once you get to a critical subscriber mass, you have tens of millions of users, or hundreds of millions of users in the case of Spotify and Netflix, the bulk of which are actually engaging very little with content on the service, but paying more per month than they are consuming the content. In fact, those people are the ones that end up not only subsidizing the more engaged users who consume content on the service relentlessly, but also comprise the profits of the service when it finally starts bringing in some money. This is why it takes subscription services so long to actually turn a profit, because they have to reach and then exceed certain critical mass of users to be able to do so. But doing so requires spending an absurd amount of money up front to make the service appealing. Now, is this going to end up being a thing that Microsoft actually can accomplish? That's another question altogether, because what happens is, and Sean Layden, the former head of PlayStation, even commented that you need hundreds of millions of subscribers. Now, back earlier and multiple times, Jim Ryan has said a subscription model like Game Pass doesn't make any sense for Sony's first-party games, considering its focus on big-budget games. And I quote, Sony Interactive Entertainment president claimed a subscription-type model would be unsustainable for PlayStation Studios because it sees its game budgets grow to well over $100 million. On Wednesday, Sony announced, this is how old this was, the PlayStation Plus collection, a library of PS4 games with subscribers to its online service will receive as part of their service on PlayStation 5. However, Jim Ryan ruled out putting new releases behind a sub-model like Microsoft with Game Pass, and he says, and I quote, "For us, having a catalog of games is not something that defines a platform. Our pitch, as you've heard, is new games, great games. We've had this conversation before. We're not going to go down the road of putting new release titles into a subscription model. Those games cost many millions of dollars, well over $100 million to develop. We just don't see that as sustainable." He also said, "We want to make the games bigger and better and hopefully at some point more persistent. So putting those into a subscription model on day one, for us, just doesn't make any sense. For others in a different situation, it might well make sense, but for us, it doesn't. We want to expand and grow our existing ecosystem, and putting new games into a subscription model just doesn't sit with that." So obviously, in contrast to that, Phil Spencer has claimed that Xbox Game Pass can be a real decision maker for people evaluating which next-gen console to buy. Commenting on the PS Plus collection, which includes games like Monster Hunter World and Bloodborne as part of the online subscription, Jim Ryan said he hopes fans were surprised and delighted by the surprise announcement. He said, "The great first-party IPs are all there, the great partner titles, and we'd say that if you are new to PlayStation or if you don't have a PS4 but are getting a PS5 and you're taking out a PlayStation Plus subscription, you're basically getting PS4 there for the price of the subscription," according to Jim Ryan. "We're delighted to be able to do that. We think that's a really exciting thing, and we hope that people are delighted by it." So again, this is very, very common to what we've seen with Microsoft and Sony. They're not doing things exactly the same, because when you do look at these things, even Netflix, for example, they rarely turn an actual profit, and a lot of people don't understand the difference between income, revenue, and profit. Profit, Xbox makes little or none of. They could actually be negative in terms of making money due to the cost of hardware and content creation and things like that. So they've built up 18 to 20 million Game Pass subscribers, but how many of those subscribers are on $1 deals? I think, and people go, well, don't pocket watch, they're $1 trillion company. I get that, but Xbox itself isn't $1 trillion company. Obviously Mixer, everybody thought Mixer was going to thrive once Microsoft decided to put money into it and put, Ninja and Shroud and all these people out there on the service, but it just turns out they gave up on it. So at some point, if Game Pass isn't, and I don't know, it could be 5 years from now, it could be 10 years from now, but at some point, it seems like if Game Pass isn't supported, if it isn't growing, then I think that obviously it might be something that Microsoft cuts its losses on. And don't get it wrong, I think Microsoft 100% will never go back to the traditional model of gaming. I just don't see them doing it. They're all about services, right? They're just all about the services, and unfortunately for the rest of us, that's not a great thing, because I think a lot of us would love to see a situation with the the way that we tend to see things, right, with the traditional hardware and stuff like that. I personally would love to see something like that. So we'll see how it works out, but I'm excited to see what the future has in store for us, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. I'm gonna link all of this. You can let me know what you think. Please sound off, rate, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for rocking out with me. Have a great day. Rack 'em up, fact 'em up, crap gamer 'em up. Crap gamer out.
Turns out, the same people as always, dropping the facts. It's not cross-gen.